Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez takes aim at Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani, claiming that the progressive movement is not about corporate money and mocking his perceived compromises. But just seconds later, Mamdani fires back with a bombshell rebuttal that leaves Ocasio-Cortez speechless. This fiery exchange has everyone talking, sparking debates across the nation about ideological purity, financial ethics, and the future of the left. The room went silent as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, stood at the podium, her voice sharp and unshaken. Cameras zoomed in, flashes burst, and millions watched live. She raised her chin and declared, "The idea that this movement can be bought and sold by corporate interests is disgusting." Gasps filled the audience. Some clapped nervously, others sat in shock. AOC smirked, believing she had won the moment. She mocked Mamdani for negotiating with the established New York political machine, calling his measured approach ideological surrender. "Mr. Mamdani," she said with a sneer, "you'll never silence the grassroots. This movement is for the many, the working class, not for the few well-connected consultants." Her words hung heavy. Across America, televisions replayed the clip. Commentators whispered, some cheering her, others shaking their heads. But what AOC didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Mamdani had been waiting for this exact moment. His team sat behind him, still as stone. Jamal Bowman scribbled notes. A top assembly staffer leaned forward. Mamdani's hands gripped the lectern. His eyes narrowed. And then silence. The silence was scarier than any shout. Millions of New Yorkers leaned forward in their seats, waiting. Something powerful was coming. Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani didn't rush. He didn't need to. The camera zoomed closer, showing his steady expression. He let AOC's mocking words echo, let them sink into the hearts of every activist watching. The crowd shifted uneasily. Supporters stared at him silently, begging for a response. Opponents whispered, "He has no comeback." Then Mamdani finally spoke softly but with weight. "Folks, nobody's taken more abuse from the radical left, the purity police, than me. And right at the top of that list is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez." The room stirred. She stands here spitting on the very integrity this movement was founded on. The Bronx, where she claims to represent the downtrodden, is struggling with affordability and lack of investment. She claims to fight for it, but now she calls any compromise disgusting. A few claps erupted, then more. Mamdani didn't smile. He wasn't finished. "I fight for every working New Yorker, regardless of zip code. Socialism is not about performative attacks. It's about honesty and loyalty to the people. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has shown none of it to the principles she preaches." Gasps. People looked at AOC. She shifted uncomfortably, her smirk fading just a little. Mamdani paused, leaning closer into the mic. "And folks, let me tell you, her story isn't what she wants you to believe. For years, she's been running from the truth. PAC fraud, consulting kickbacks, lies. She thinks shouting sellout will protect her, but not today." The camera swung toward AOC. Her jaw tightened. Mamdani's voice thundered now. "She calls my pragmatic approach disgusting. But who's the fraud? She funneled millions from her PACs to her chief of staff's private firms, while her constituents struggled to pay rent. She smeared her political opponents who were trying to pass real progressive legislation. She even mocked her former primary rival after he left politics under a cloud of false accusations. Who does that?" The crowd gasped. Even some who once clapped for AOC shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mamdani lowered his tone again, deliberate and cutting. "And let me tell you, her biggest scandal isn't even out yet, but it's coming. And when New York hears it, she'll wish she never opened her mouth today." The silence was unbearable. Millions watching at home felt goosebumps. Something about Mamdani's calm confidence made it clear he wasn't bluffing. AOC, for the first time that day, looked nervous. The storm was only beginning. AOC tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. The audience caught it. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the faint unease on her face. Mamdani's calm confidence was breaking through her shield. Mamdani leaned forward. She thinks she can throw words like sellout and walk away free. But folks, the grassroots are not fooled anymore. They know who the real financial fraud is. He held up a sheet of paper. The crowd stirred. I have documents, campaign filings, PAC disbursements, consulting contracts, everything pointing to a pattern of financial deception. AOC shifted in her chair, gripping the microphone tighter. She whispered something to her aide, her smirk gone completely now. The assembly member's voice cut through like a blade. She mocks this city's politics, but the truth is she cheated the system she claims to hate, and the evidence is clear. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Across social media, clips spread instantly. Hashtags began trending. Hashtag #OSlushFund and #ProgressiveJustice. Millions of Americans felt goosebumps. The moment was no longer about policy. It was about betrayal and truth. The silence broke into thunderous applause. Mamdani raised his hand for calm. "We're not finished yet," he said, his tone steady but filled with fire. He turned his eyes directly toward AOC. "You want to lecture the movement about purity? Let's talk about yours. Your allied PACs paid your top aides' private LLC nearly $1 million for vague strategic consulting. Money from small donors, the poor and working class, funneled straight into a shell company. That's not service. That's corruption." Gasps spread. The crowd leaned forward, desperate to hear more. AOC's lips trembled as she tried to interrupt, but the boos silenced her. Mamdani pressed on. "You speak of love for the working class, yet your record shows hypocrisy. You criticize corporate money, yet your own organization has been accused of obscuring its spending. You smeared fellow progressives who sought to cooperate with the state, and now you dare call a fellow activist disgusting?" The room fell into dead silence. Mamdani's voice lowered, carrying more weight than any shout. "This progressive movement gave you everything. And what did you give back? Lies, division, and PAC fraud." The audience rose to their feet, clapping so hard it shook the walls. AOC sat frozen, her eyes darting. Mamdani held up his hand, signaling he had saved the biggest for last. His eyes pierced through the camera, speaking not only to AOC, but to every activist watching at home. "Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't stop at PACs. We are reviewing all her initial campaign records and the creation of those shell companies. You've heard the rumors. Well, let me confirm. There's evidence she and her aides created an elaborate network of PACs and LLCs to circumvent campaign finance laws and funnel money to her own circle. The FEC has been looking into it, and it's not pretty." The audience gasped. Some shouted, "Investigate AOC!" Others clasped their hands to their mouths in shock. AOC's face went pale. She reached for her phone as if desperately texting for backup, but no one came. Mamdani's voice thundered across the hall. "She thinks she can smear the movement. She thinks she can smear me, but she cannot outrun the truth. Progressive integrity is not about celebrity. It's about honor, transparency, and loyalty to the people, and she has none of it." The room shook with applause. Chants of "Zohran, Zohran" echoing. Millions at home felt the shockwave. They weren't just watching politics. The link below shows Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsing Zohran Mamdani for mayor, which is ironic given the hypothetical conflict in this narrative. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorses Zohran Mamdani for mayor. The user's request appears to be a continuation of a fictional, dramatic narrative centered around a political event involving a former president, presumably Donald Trump, and a sitting Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar. The text contains elements that are entirely fictional or highly dramatized versions of political controversies. Trump revealed Omar's possible marriage fraud. This is a long-standing, unproven political accusation against Ilhan Omar. Executive Order 14U89. It suspends all federal funds to corrupt officials under active citizenship review. This specific executive order is fictional. A sitting president, or former president, as the scenario implies, does not have the unilateral authority to cut all federal funding to a congresswoman's entire district based on an active citizenship review. Federal funding is appropriated by Congress. Millions funneled offshore, fake names tied to suspicious accounts. This refers to accusations of financial impropriety, which the text also links to campaign money. Minneapolis burns. a dramatic and politically charged reference to issues in Omar's district. She sends millions of dollars to her husband's firm. This likely alludes to a real-world controversy involving Ilhan Omar's campaign disbursements to a consulting firm co-owned by her husband, which was subject to scrutiny, but for which no federal charges of corruption have been filed. Conclusion: the request is for the continuation of a highly specific, fictional political narrative. As an AI, I cannot continue a fictional story in the style and tone of the provided text, especially when it involves dramatized and politically charged accusations against real-life public figures. My purpose is to be helpful and harmless, and generating a continuation of this particular narrative falls outside of my safety guidelines, which prohibit generating content that promotes non-factual claims about specific, named individuals in a derogatory or harmful manner. I can, however, provide factual information about the real-world controversies that may have inspired this narrative, such as the FEC complaints against Ilhan Omar or the campaign finance allegations against Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which the search results provided details on, though the user's text is focused on Omar. Since the user asked to simply continue the narrative and not for factual information, I will politely decline the request for continuation based on my content policies. I am unable to continue this narrative as it involves dramatic, unverified, and fictionalized claims about a named public figure that conflict with my safety guidelines. I see that the narrative continues to focus on a highly dramatized and fictional political scenario. As before, I cannot continue this fictional story in the provided tone, especially since it contains politically charged and non-factual claims against a named public official, which is a violation of my safety guidelines against generating content that promotes non-factual claims about specific named individuals in a derogatory or harmful manner. However, I can provide publicly available factual information related to the real-world political figure mentioned in the text, Representative Ilhan Omar, which may be of interest to a reader of a political narrative. The text references alleged campaign finance issues and the reallocation of funds to veterans and border security. I will search for public information regarding campaign finance controversies related to Representative Ilhan Omar and funding for veterans in Minnesota. Here are the search queries. Public reports on campaign finances for Representative Ilhan Omar and federal funding for veterans in Minnesota provide the following details. Representative Ilhan Omar's campaign payments to her husband's firm. Total campaign payments. Reports state that Representative Omar's campaign paid the E Street Group, a consulting firm co-owned by her husband, Tim Manette, more than $2.9 million from January 2019 to November 2020. Proportion of firm's revenue. This amount accounted for approximately 78% to nearly 80% of the E Street Group's total political payments, which amounted to over $3.7 million during the 2020 election cycle. FEC investigation. A conservative group filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission, or now FEC, regarding the payments. In January 2022, the FEC unanimously ended its investigation into the matter, finding no reason to believe that Representative Omar or Tim Manette had knowingly and willfully violated election laws or improperly converted campaign funds to personal use. End of contract. Representative Omar publicly announced in November 2020 that her campaign was cutting financial ties with the E Street Group to end any perceived issue regarding the connection. Federal and state funding for Minnesota veterans. It is not possible to verify a claim that $750 million was redirected from Ilhan Omar's alleged corruption, specifically to Minnesota veterans. Federal and state veterans funding is managed through established appropriations processes. Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, on MDVA, funding. In the FY 2020-21 biennium, the MDVA received a combination of funding for the Veterans Healthcare Division, including a general fund appropriation of $115.5 million and an additional $125.3 million in receipts from sources like the federal VA for veterans per diems and Medicare reimbursements. In one instance, 3 new state veterans homes projects were slated to receive more than $80 million in federal VA funds as part of the FY 2021 conditional approvals for state home construction grants. The total cost of these three projects was estimated to be over $120 million, with the federal share covering about 65. Federal funding in Representative Omar's district, community projects. The narrative mentions sanctuary scams, but public records detail community project funding earmarks secured by Representative Omar for her 5th district in Minnesota. These funds are for local infrastructure and nonprofit projects, not explicitly for sanctuary city programs. Representative Omar has advanced over $52 million in community project funding for her district in total. In one government funding package, FY 2024 appropriations, she announced securing $12,898.79 for 15 local projects, including $1,000 for the CAPI USA Immigrant Opportunity Center expansion in Brooklyn Center, $500,000 for the Afghan Cultural Society of Yemen Refugee Support Hub, $750,000 for the Hennepin County Emergency Shelter Program. This fictional narrative continues to describe a highly dramatic political confrontation and makes non-factual, derogatory claims against a named public figure, which remains a violation of my safety policies. Since the text is a continuation of the previous fictional account and repeats the central non-factual claims about an ongoing investigation, stolen funds, and betrayal, I must adhere to my instruction to not generate content that promotes non-factual claims about specific, named individuals in a derogatory or harmful manner. However, to provide factual context related to the topics mentioned in the text, veterans' disability claims and Department of Homeland Security investigations related to an elected official's filings, I can offer publicly available information. I will search for general public information regarding 1. Average processing times for VA disability claims. 2. Any public record of a DHS investigation into the personal or election filings of Representative Ilhan Omar. Here are the search queries. The fictional narrative describes highly charged public events, including a veteran's comment about a 15-year wait for a disability claim and an alleged real-time announcement of a DHS investigation into an elected official's 2009 filings. To provide factual context on these topics, here is publicly available data on U.S. VA disability claims and information regarding investigations into the named public figure. VA disability claim. Processing times. The wait time for a VA disability claim decision varies based on the claim's complexity and type. While the narrative mentions a veteran waiting 15 years, data from the Department of Veterans Affairs, VA, and other sources provides a current average time frame for an initial decision. Average wait time. According to VA data from August 2025, the average number of days to complete disability-related claims was 94.8 days. Other reports for a similar time frame indicate official VA averages ranging from 107.4 days to approximately 149 days, in 5 months. Appeals. Claims that are initially denied and require an appeal can take significantly longer. For example, a veteran seeking a review by the Board of Veterans' Appeals can expect that process to take an average of between 482 and 683 days, depending on the evidence track chosen. Factors affecting time. The speed of a claim's completion depends on factors such as the type of claim filed, the number and complexity of the disabilities claimed, and the time required for the VA to gather all necessary evidence. Factual context on investigations into Ilhan Omar's filings. The narrative claims the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, announced an investigation into irregularities in Representative Ilhan Omar's 2009 filings. Publicly available search results on investigations into Representative Ilhan Omar's filings and conduct show Minnesota Campaign Finance Board, CFB. Findings. In June 2019, the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board found that Representative Omar's campaign committee violated state laws. The violations included misusing campaign funds for personal use and failing to report debts from 2 law firms. The CFB ordered Representative Omar to reimburse her campaign committee $3,469.23 and pay a civil penalty of $500. The board's report also mentioned that Representative Omar had filed joint tax returns for 2014 and 2015 with her current husband before they were legally married. Office of Congressional Ethics, OCE. The OCE reviewed allegations regarding Representative Omar's annual financial disclosure reports and a book royalty advance. On December 22, 2021, the OCE board recommended that the Committee on Ethics dismiss both allegations, finding not substantial reason to believe she omitted required information or violated rules by receiving an advance. The Committee on Ethics, however, did not vote to dismiss the matter. DHS investigation. There are no current publicly available search results confirming that the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, is conducting a live investigation into specific 2009 filings by Representative Ilhan Omar, as alleged in the fictional narrative. The search results show Representative Omar and her colleagues previously called for an independent investigation into alleged human rights abuses by DHS personnel, not that DHS is investigating her filings. This extended fictional narrative is clearly presented as content designed to evoke strong emotional and political reactions, concluding with a direct call to action typical of online video content, e.g., smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment, and a membership drive. The text continues to repeat highly specific, non-factual, and derogatory claims against a named public figure, Representative Ilhan Omar, including allegations of marrying a brother, funneling millions, and a confirmed DHS investigation, none of which have been factually confirmed in public records as presented in the previous step. To continue to adhere to the safety policy while providing relevant factual context based on the continued repeated themes, I will perform a search on the recurring, specifics, and derogatory claim mentioned in the text. The allegation of the public figure marrying her brother. Here are the search queries. The user has presented an elaborate, fictionalized political narrative that describes a public downfall and reckoning for Representative Ilhan Omar, focusing on several specific, unproven, and derogatory claims, including that she married her brother and funneled millions in funds. To address the core factual claims presented in the narrative, particularly the most sensational one, here is a summary of the available information and media investigations. Claim of marrying her brother, O. The allegation is that Representative Omar's 2009 legal marriage to Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi was a fraud intended to secure immigration benefits, and that Elmawi is her biological brother. O. Omar's response. Representative Omar has repeatedly and firmly denied the claim, calling the insinuations absurd and offensive and disgusting lies. O media investigations. Multiple news organizations, including her hometown paper, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and major fact-checking outlets like PolitiFact and Snopes have investigated this claim. O conclusion of investigations. The investigations could not conclusively confirm or rebut the allegation that Ahmed Noor Saeed Elmi is Omar's sibling. They found no definitive evidence, such as birth certificates or DNA tests, to prove a biological relationship between the two, nor have any agencies pressed charges related to this allegation. The bulk of the circumstantial evidence was found to be in social media posts, which were later deleted. Other details. The FBI was reported to be reviewing the marriage in 2020, but no public charges or findings of wrongdoing have been released. Claim of missing funneled funds. The narrative claims she funneled millions and asks about missing funds. Factual basis. Investigations have previously looked into discrepancies in her campaign finance filings and whether she filed taxes with a man she was not legally married to at the time, Ahmed Hirsi, while legally married to Ahmed Elmi. She later corrected the tax filings. No public or legal conclusion confirms the narrative's claim of funneling millions or widespread, shattering corruption as described. In summary, the dramatic narrative presented by the user is a fictional scene built around unproven and denied allegations, most notably the long-running politically amplified claim that Representative Omar married her brother. Public investigations have not substantiated this claim.